Welcome to Crimepedia podcast. This week I am your host. My name is Cherry, and with me, as always, is the lovely Morgan.
Hello, Cherry. How are you?
Hello, Morgan. I am great. Thank you very much. I am so good, in fact. I am strong today. Strong and happy. So, you've got good news for us.
I do have great news. So we have 2 new patrons to welcome. So welcome to Anna and Senya. Hope I said that right.
Welcome to you both, Anna and Senya. Thank you very much for joining our gang. And we're getting quite a good gang together. I'm really excited. It's really lovely. And for you guys that don't know what Patreon is and you've never heard of it, it's basically something that you can sign into that you can hear extra episodes of Crimepedia. And they are not extra crime episodes always. We do have extra very fun episodes. This week we talked about becoming grandparents. we talked about our podcast when we're 80. We talked about a lot of different things. So if you would like to join, then you are most welcome. We would love to have you. And it helps keep us in chocolate and like tea and stuff like that. So we always appreciate anybody that wants to become a Patreon. Yes.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to do that, you can visit us at patreon.com/crimepedia. And I think you can join for as little as $2 a month. So it won't cost you too much.
Yep. No, it's quite good.
Absolutely.
And we'll love to have you. So thank you for joining us this week. This week is a bit of a different case for us. It's something we would concentrate on one case an episode, but this instead we're going to be concentrating on a place rather than a specific case. So yeah, I think you're going to find this a really interesting episode, and I'd love to hear what people think about it. So this week's episode is called The Curse of Harling Woods. Harling Wood is also known as Thorpe Forest. It's a beautiful wooded area between East and West Harling in Norfolk. There are plenty of woodland walks to enjoy. There's pathways for running, there are dog walking areas, beautiful cabins that you can stay in by the river, and the area is over 993 hectares. But being beautiful isn't all the wood is known for. Unfortunately, there have been a murder, a rape, a suicide, and even UFO sightings. This is Crimepedia, and this is the curse of Harling Wood. Okay, Morgan, so on June the 7th, 1994, at 12:20 p.m, a 71-year-old female pensioner who was a retired college lecturer was walking her dog. Now, a dog was a small white Westie, and she was walking this dog in an area of Harling Wood, which is known as the Gallops. Now, the reason it's called the Gallops is because it was an area that once led to a place called Birdwell Hall, which was a really old grand house. And this house had its own moat. It had its own moat house, like down by the river. But it was demolished sort of like 1700s. But she was approached whilst walking her dog by a teenage boy who asked her for the time. Now, he asked her for the time and then dragged her into the bushes and brutally attacked her and raped her. It was a horrific attack. So this attack lasted around 20 minutes, 20 minutes total, in which time he even tried to strangle her, but was unable to. He left her in the bushes, sort of within brambles and within stinging nettles, almost completely naked. And before he left, leaving her obviously in a battered and bruised state, he also attacked the dog that was with her. So this guy is... But the thing is, he was described as being around 16 years old, which I think is just horrific.
That's very violent for someone so young.
Yeah, very. And so the description that she was able to give is that he was around 16. He had a Mediterranean complexion, approximately 5'6" to 5'7". He had medium build with dark brown. Now, this is quite important, I think. Dark brown hair, which was shaved at the sides and then like
Okay.
straggly on top, kind of like what you would call like a mop top hair.
A bowl cut. We would call it a bowl cut at that time.
Right. Okay.
So it's like
So,
longer. So the top is longer, but like it's shaved and like almost like an undercut.
right.
Right?
Okay.
Is that
Around the
what we're talking
sides.
about?
Yeah. I think that's what they shaved at the side. And it's all
Yeah.
like scraggly on top and like curly on top. I guess if you had a bowl cut and your hair was curly, then that's how it would be, wouldn't it
Okay.
be? Okay.
Right.
So,
Okay.
this is all we know about this guy. We know that he was on a push bike and like a bicycle. We know that he was traveling on a
Right.
bicycle. I mean, he's 16 years old. He's not driving, is he? He's like, on his bicycle. Detectives had over 30 lines of investigations to follow up on this case, and they even managed to compile a complete DNA profile of the offender.
Oh
But
wow. Okay.
unfortunately, despite a £10,000 reward being offered, he was never actually brought to justice at all. So it's still, even now, unsolved to this day.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about this area, this
Yeah.
Harling Woods.
Yeah.
How do you describe? Is it a rural area? Is it
Yeah.
populated?
No, it's a woodland. So on this woodland, like I said, it was a you could go and do hike like walking around. It's not like hilly, like hiking sort of area. It's like a big woodland, like a almost like a big national park kind of thing that you can go and walk around, walk your dogs around. There's lots of little trails that you can follow. There's lots of wildlife trails you can do. You can have picnics there. There's lots of
Hmm.
dense woodland. There's also places that you can stay there on holiday. So if you Google it, it's also called there's another name for it. It's also known as Thorpe Forest. And so that's what it's like. It's a forest. You can go there and a lot of people, a lot of ladies would walk there alone, walk their dogs alone. And it's a kind of place that's very overgrown. It's very natural. There's lots of brambles, there's lots of stinging nettles. But there are paths that you can sort of walk along and follow little trails to go round. There are cabins that are in the woods that you could hire to stay in, to go and, stay down by the river and that kind of stuff.
Hmm. So it's not urban at all.
No.
Um, Here's the thing: how many 16-year-olds are going to be that fit that description
Hmm.
that are going to be riding a bike on that day
Yeah.
or in that
Around
area? I
that
mean,
area.
I can't imagine that a 16-year-old is going to be riding, you know, miles and miles and miles on a bike to get out there. And
Mm.
so it sounds to me like this has to be someone local to the area.
I agree.
So it's like how does no one come forward with any information that would lead police to them, especially if they have a DNA profile on the person.
That's right. I mean, obviously, he's not we're talking about 1994, so this guy isn't in the police database at that time. And obviously hasn't
Mhm.
been since because it hasn't been linked together, so he's obviously not been in trouble since. But when she said he has got like a Mediterranean complexion, does that
Mhm.
mean that he's not local or that he's moved to the area, or does that mean he's there on holiday and he's going home?
Mhm.
Could that be the reason why he's never turned up on the database ever again? Because somebody who's got that kind of somebody's behaving like that, you're telling me they're never going to do it again? I'm not so sure.
Right.
I mean, he
I don't
managed to
like
he
the
managed to rape her, so he's
Mhm.
he's done what he was setting out to do, but at 16, like that kind of
Yeah.
age.
I don't like the description Mediterranean complexion because that is so broad. Are you talking
Yeah,
Spanish? Are you talking Italian? Are
yeah,
you talking North African? Are you talking
yeah.
Egyptian? There, so it's not like I'm assuming she meant he was olive complective, right? So
Olive
he
complexion,
was probably
yeah.
so,
Dark
but that
hair.
kind of like throws you off a little bit, right? So what are we
Mm,
looking for? Are you looking for someone that is more North African? Are you looking for someone that's more Southern Europe? So it's not the
yeah.
greatest of descriptive terms, I would say.
No. And it's very hard. I mean, at the time she was 71 and she's in
Right,
an absolutely horrific circumstance. And
right.
obviously this is all happening to her. So I mean, you've also got that generational gap of explaining things. Like somebody of a 71-year-old would their language be so much different to somebody say like our age compared to somebody who's like
Hmm.
18. The language would be so different. So it would be interesting to it would be very interesting to see what this guy looked like. But
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and
they never got him.
never, yeah, which is crazy because I would with the a younger male on a bike,
Mm.
really, unless someone he drove to, you know, drove a car with a bike on top of it or whatever, or someone
Yeah.
had dropped them off. I mean, your search area is probably really limited. I mean, I would say if he's from the area and lives in the area, he's probably within what 10-mile radius.
Yeah. And also,
That's what I
somebody
would
must
guess.
know who he is because
Mm-hmm.
this was all over the news. This was everywhere. It was a
Yeah.
huge horrific thing to have happened at the time, and it was on all of the local news, all of the local media. So
Yeah.
somebody must have a son or somebody staying with them or a neighbor who has a son that's got this haircut that's on a bike that's, you know, Mediterranean olivey skin. Somebody somewhere in the local area must recognize that description,
Right. No,
but
you're
unfortunately not. Now, so it was pretty much soon after the attack, though, she actually moved away from the area, and it's not really. I believe she moved up north, and it's not actually
okay.
known whether now even still alive. But unfortunately, no one was ever brought to justice for her
Mm.
rape and attempted murder. Now, if we fast forward to August 2017, there was an
Yep.
83-year-old father of two, a guy called Peter Wrighton. Now, at around 10:30 a.m., he was walking his dogs in Harling Wood when he was viciously attacked from behind. Now, when I say viciously, I mean viciously. This guy was stabbed 45 times. The attack was
Oh.
so brutal that police at first believed that it was an animal attack. He
Oh
was
wow.
that badly attacked. He did suffer defensive wounds on his hands, so we know that he fought his attacker, but his main injuries were to his head and his face. Now, with Peter's murder, there was no known motive. Friends and family had reported Peter to be kind, mild mannered, no enemies, no conflicts, just a generally really, really nice man. And on the morning that Peter was murdered, he had taken his dogs for a walk, as he usually did. His wife, Anne, was at home, and Peter had set off to walk the dogs. And when he didn't come home, she was quite worried because she thought that maybe he had had a medical emergency, or maybe he had got lost, or something had happened to him. Something happened to one of the dogs, and they'd run off, and maybe he
Mm-hmm.
was in there searching for the dogs. So she drove to the area to see if she could find Peter. Now, I know that from the further and subsequent reports, a lady found him. I'm not sure if the lady was actually Anne, but I know that a lady found Peter whilst on the trail, and Peter's body was pulled into bushes. His wallet and car keys were still on his person, and his hands were put on top of him. So this sort of dispelled the kind of like animal dragging him into the bushes, because his hands were sort of placed on top of him, and obviously
Yeah.
animals don't really generally do that. The post mortem was carried out, and they revealed that it was a murder, a violent, brutal attack from behind initially, with stab wounds predominantly to his head and throat, and that the wounds were so deep he had almost suffered a decapitation. So the murder investigation was then launched, and police presence in East Harling was stepped up. There were dog walkers being questioned on the trails. There were mounted police on horses that were around the area, and the presence of the police was completely stepped up in the area. So people were starting to feel quite vulnerable. Dog walkers stopped using the area because they were worried that there was now a killer on the loose. There seemed to be no kind of motive for Peter's murder. Nobody knew of any reason why anybody would want to attack Peter specifically. So when the dog walkers were questioned, they obviously quite clearly began to become really suspicious, really upset about what had happened, the fact that it could have been them that day if they were walking on the trails that day. And a
Mm-hmm.
dog walker came forward to police to report that he had seen some suspicious activities happening in the woods. He reported that he had seen a car pull up and two men had got out of the car. One was keeping lookout while the other one was burying something in the woods. Okay. Later, then, a young man would pull up on a bicycle. He would then be seen digging in that area. He would take a package out, smell it, and then put it in his jacket and ride away. And there were a lot of
Oh,
these reports of people doing this. So there was a lot that there may be drug deals happening in the woods.
right. That's a lot of work to do for a drug deal. though. I mean, that's what
Well,
it
it's
sounds
quite
like. It absolutely
easy though,
sounds like
isn't it? If you're
it
just
is.
driving out and then somebody else comes and picks it up where you've told them to pick it up and it's
Hmm.
buried, that's quite a good, easy exchange.
That is. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, are does it police believe that maybe Peter had come across one of these
Well, this was the initial,
exchanges?
yeah, this was the initial thought that perhaps Peter had stumbled across something and
Right.
had frightened or had, seen something that they didn't want him to see, and that he had
Yeah.
been then pulled prey to this vicious attack. Um,
Gotcha. Okay.
Police did a lot of appeals, and a lot of people came forward saying that there was a man that they had seen that morning acting strangely on the heath on the day of the murder. And in particular, this one man said that he saw this guy that he thought was acting really strangely, and he described him as walking with a purpose. He said that he was wearing heavy duty
Okay.
flip flops and shorts, which was really weird at the time because he said, like, nobody who walked their dog there regularly would even wear that kind of stuff in that area because the brambles
Right.
and the stinging nettles and stuff were so thick in places that you just wouldn't go there with your bare feet out, kind of thing, which I could
Yeah.
understand that. And if you're familiar with the area, then you would normally be wearing boots or trousers. So this guy gave police an e-fit, and police put this e-fit out into the public, and it was a breakthrough for the police because people came forward naming the suspect as a 24-year-old guy called Alexander Palmer.
Okay.
A psychiatrist that had worked with Palmer came forward to say that there were concerns with the way he had been talking previously in their sessions. The psychiatrist said that Palmer had talked about violent attacks and having this little voice in his head called Little Alex that would push him to attack a stranger with a knife. And obviously, this, as soon as there was this e-fit was put out, and as soon as the crime had been reported in the media, this psychiatrist really couldn't keep quiet anymore because this was quite obvious that this seemed to be very fitting for the same person. So the police then got pictures of Alexander Palmer from his Facebook page, and they matched the
Hmm.
e-fit, and it does look exactly
Oh.
like him. They look really eerily similar because e-fits don't always look like, when you do see the perpetrator after, they don't always look, they're a bit
Yeah.
wonky, aren't they, e-fits?
Yeah. E-fits are weird because it's that, like, what would it call, like, almost like that uncanny valley, right? Where you look at
Yeah,
them, you're like, okay, they look like a person, but there's something that's kind of off about it.
yeah, yeah.
So it's interesting that they look at the e-fit versus his picture from Facebook. It's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty close match.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put that up in our on our socials. I'll put the e-fit up and I'll put the picture of him up, and you'll see how closely related they are. It's actually really, it's a really good, one of the best sort of correlations I've ever seen. Um, So
Uh,
police then were looking at this thinking, like, we can't believe our luck. We've managed to find this e-fit, be given a description of this guy. A psychiatrist has come forward with a name. Other people are coming forward with a name. And now we've got this Facebook picture and it matches the e-fit. So we think we've got our guy. So the police started viewing CCTV, and Alexandra Palmer, they found, was a former soldier.
okay.
The CCTV showed that Palmer had taken his partner to work in the city that morning, of the morning of the murder. And on the way to take his partner to work, he was wearing a light coloured shirt. But later on, when the ANPR cameras and the CCTV cameras picked him back up again, returning, he was wearing a completely different shirt, a darker shirt. And when police
Mm.
questioned that, he came back and said, no, he was in the same clothes all day. He didn't get changed. He was in the same clothes. Now, he was then arrested in connection with Peter's murder. And the police believe that they had the proof that Palmer did kill Peter. His car was seen on the ANPR cameras, putting him in the area at the time. When the police were going through Palmer's phone, they had found images of a knife that he had just bought. And it was like it's a hunting knife. It's like a black handled, I don't know. I would describe it, if I was saying, like a commando knife, like a knife you would take out hunting. It's that kind of like fat handled knife with quite a thick blade on the end.
Mhm.
So he
Yeah.
had this, and they found pictures of this knife that he had just recently bought on his Facebook. He initially denied killing Peter, initially denied everything, and then all of a sudden he just stopped talking to police and just refused to talk to police at all. In his car, there was a map of the area and they found out that 2 weeks before the murder, he had been in that area, completing the exact same visit and being in the exact same place as he had the day of Peter's murder. So police then
Mhm.
believe that this was premeditated, that he had planned to do this, and that it wasn't exactly. They didn't think it was Peter who was the intended target. It was actually anyone that he found
Oh,
on that
wow.
trail, which is really scary.
It is.
Really
That is
scary.
like he had no didn't want anyone in particular. He just whoever he
No.
happened to come across.
And this is exactly the same as Wayne Couzens, when the case where he was a police officer in the Met and he killed
Oh,
a
yes.
woman. And it is exactly the same as
Mhm.
him. He had an idea that he was going to kill somebody that night. He didn't know who. It was going to be the first person that he came across. So it just
Mm.
happened by ridiculously bad luck that Peter was actually walking in that area at the same time that he was.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
That's awful, isn't it? It's awful to think that. If he'd just been delayed 5 minutes, but then it could have been somebody else.
Someone else. Yeah.
And somebody else is going
So
to suffer the same fate as Peter.
it might not have been that day. It could have been another day. Something was going to
Yeah.
happen with this guy.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. The police also found a notebook of Palmer's, and in it was lots of writing and ramblings in which he described how he wanted to go for, and that's the quote, go for dog walkers. Why in particular he wanted to attack a dog walker, I'm not actually sure. But he
Mhm.
described in this how he wanted to attack dog walkers, how he's going to do it with a knife. Police never actually recovered the murder weapon at all. So it's never been found. So I don't know where. It's such a vast area. You It could be anywhere in that whole woodland. It might not
Yeah.
necessarily have been anywhere near where Peter was actually murdered. He could have got rid of that anywhere in that area. Chances of finding it would
Wow.
be
Okay.
very slim unless they turned
Oh,
over the
yeah.
whole 990 odd hectares, which is unrealistic.
Mhm. Wow. Okay.
So in February 2018, Alexander Palmer stood in court charged with Peter Wrighton's murder. Now, the QC that was defending him was a guy called David Spence. And obviously, he was QC at the time because we had a queen. He was suffering from, so he said basically that Palmer was suffering from a mental disorder at the time, and that there was plenty of evidence that he was psychotic. He said that the assault on him by a fellow trainee commander when he was back in the army in 2014 appeared to have precipitated his mental disorder. And there was never ever any evidence of any aggressive conduct previous to this attack in 2014. So they're using their defense as either like murder by diminished responsibility or manslaughter by diminished responsibility, or the fact that he was not very, he was ill, that he was mentally not of sound mind at the time of this murder. But the police
Yeah.
refuted that, and the prosecution would said, well, no, because this has taken premeditation and planning. This guy's bought this knife. This guy's writing about what he wants to do. This guy is planning this murder. He's gone there with the intention to murder somebody. Now, although Palmer was taking antipsychotic medication at the time of the trial, he was not taking any at the time of the killing.
Mm.
This
Mm-mm.
makes you really angry. This makes you really angry from the point of the family, I feel, because it sounds kind of like to me like a bit of a cop out. Like it's kind of like, oh well,
Yep.
he's got a mental disorder, then we should go easy on him because he's a former soldier, and and I
It's
understand that train of thought.
it's a very hard situation, right?
Yes.
Um, because I see both points of view. Because you remember it's been a while now. We did the story. This was one of our early stories. The story of Matt Morgan who
Yes.
killed
Yeah.
his
It
mom and
was.
dad, tried to kill
That's right.
his sister,
Sister.
and it was the same situation where he was supposed to be on medication. There was a doctor who who took him off of it, so he wasn't no
Yeah.
longer on that medication,
Yeah.
and he had a psychotic snap and killed his family. And so while he did, I think in that case, while he did, you know, was responsible for it and was found, found to be responsible for the murders, he ended up, what was it? He got sent to a state-run facility, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
behavioral health
Like
facility
a
where
yeah.
lives a day. So it's tough because on one sense, yeah, I think you need to hold people responsible for their actions,
Yeah. But
but
you need to take into account, how they are,
yeah, I don't think
psychologically.
I don't think you just let them walk because
No.
they failed to take, medication. So was he medicated prior to this?
No, no, he wasn't on any medication prior to this. And this is the thing, because with that Matt Morgan case that we did, we had a lot.
Mhm,
That's probably, I think, one of the cases that we've had the most response from. And we've had response from
mhm,
psychiatrists. Psychiatrists have contacted us about that. People that work
mhm.
in um, hospitals for people that
Yeah.
have mental illnesses and that suffer with their mental issues, and it's the language that's used. And I did speak to somebody on Facebook, and they were saying that they do this as a job, and the way that we explained it was that the guy was mentally ill and that he was suffering, but we used the wrong kind of wording
Mm,
for it. And I think when
mhm.
you work in that in if you work in that industry and you understand it, you understand what's going on, you understand the right terminology to use. We're not psychiatrists, we're not doctors, we don't work in that field. So for us, we're looking at it as a complete layperson, in that we are being presented with a case where somebody has carried out this horrific act. We are kind of looking at it from the family's point of view, from an outsider's point of
Mm,
view, not from a clinical point of view. And I think that there
right.
are people that have had a lot of issues, that have worked through their issues, that have worked really, really hard to shake off that kind of stigma, and that they, with their medication, they are able to live an absolutely fantastically normal life.
Yeah.
But there are people that can't, and there are people that have gone on to do other things. And it's very difficult. And I'm glad that I'm not the person that's in charge of making these decisions, because it's a very, very hard job. When you look at it
Yes,
from
it
a
is.
family's point of view, your family member, your dad, your husband, your brother, your friend has been brutally murdered for no apparent reason other than this guy has decided that he wants to know what it's like
Mhm.
to attack somebody with a knife.
Yeah.
And the fact that I understand that, perhaps, I mean, they've said that afterwards he had a psychotic break, and that, and I understand that, and that's really unfortunate. But
Right.
you tell that to his wife, and you tell that to his daughter and his son, and you can sit in front of them and say, this poor man has had a psychotic break and has brutally, and I mean, it's brutally murdered your father. And are you
Mhm.
expecting them to feel sorry for that man? Are you expecting them to understand and forgive that man? Because unfortunately, he's had a psychotic break. I feel for the guy. He's had a
Yeah.
psychotic break. He's done something terrible. But then when you look at it, he didn't just snap in that moment. He didn't just have a psychotic break in that moment. This is a pre-planned, premeditated attack.
Yes. He had been working up to it.
Yes.
And at any time he could have stopped and said, "Something's not right.
Yeah.
I need to seek help."
Yes.
He
Or
had that ability.
would other people would other people have not seen that? Would his partner have not seen that he was acting very strangely? My experience
Mhm.
with somebody that was suffering psychosis was that they acted very strangely, and we knew something wasn't right. But that's only I can only talk from my own personal experience. I can't talk from a clinical point of view, a vast range of people. So just
Right.
personally, from my own point of view, that person, we knew something wasn't right, something didn't feel right, the person wasn't behaving like they normally did, and we didn't know what was wrong, we didn't know to what extent was wrong, but we knew something
Yeah.
wasn't right. So I wonder if this person's partner, friends, or had any kind of inkling that perhaps he wasn't acting I mean, the guy went and picked his partner up from work later that day, knowing full well what he had done that
What he had
morning.
just done. Mhm.
So I'd be really interested to talk to I'll be very interested to talk to like a psychiatrist about this. And would there be, what sort of things would be happening in this person's life? What would their behavior be like? Are they able to carry out something so horrific and then just go back to normal like nothing's happened? Would they not be worried that there was somebody going to find them, that the police were going to work out that it was them? I think
Mhm.
if you carry out a crime, even if you're a hardened, seasoned criminal, surely you're always trying to evade the police. You're always worried that that knock on the door could be the day that they find out that it was you that did this. If you'd carried out, a murder or something and you got away with it, surely there's something in the back of your mind that when you see a police officer or, isn't there something there that does that to you that makes you think, oh God, this could be it? For me, I
Mhm.
think it would. I think I'd be like paranoid all the time. Or is that because because I'm not a criminal and I don't do that? Is that because I'm just an everyday Joe?
I think so. I mean, I'd be concerned if that's something you thought about, you know?
Yeah. But if you carried out something like awful, if something happened like in your childhood or something awful, and you had been responsible for somebody dying, but they didn't actually find out it
Uh,
was you, for the rest of your life, wouldn't you always be worried that they are going to find out, that somebody's going to discover
no,
something?
100%.
You would,
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be
I
interested
mean,
if
I'm
he
sure.
was acting shifty after.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I've never done anything like that. I've never done anything criminal, which I have to worry about.
No.
But like, I will like have thoughts about like things that I did when I was younger that are embarrassing and they haunt me
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So if I did something that horrific to someone,
yeah.
oh,
You're gonna think about
100%.
it. Yeah, you are gonna
Yeah.
think about it again. So during this trial, the jury heard that there were two eyewitnesses and they described a man that looked exactly like Palmer. There were AMPR
Mhm.
cameras that put his vehicle in the area. There was CCTV that had confirmed that he was in the area at the time. There was cell site data putting him in the area at the time of the murder. They heard all this evidence and then they retired for 49 minutes and they came back with a decision that Alexander Palmer was guilty of murder.
Mm, okay.
So
Not surprised.
taking his mental illness, or this is how it was reported, taking his mental illness into account, the judge
Yeah.
jailed Alexander Palmer for at least 28 years.
Oh, okay. Um,
So and he
what
didn't
was
go to
what would the max have been
well, that would be like,
for
it
that
would be
crime?
like life. Yeah. So life, I think life is
Okay.
like 25 years. So he's got like 28.
Now, but would it be life? Are they able to do life without parole, or would they be? Would he have been eligible for parole at some point?
I think
Do we
eligible
know?
for parole at some point. He wasn't put into a medical facility. He was put into a jail.
Oh, okay. So he got 28 years in jail, in
Yeah.
prison,
In prison. Yeah.
and that was that a hard 28, or is that hard 28 with chance for parole?
I think it's hard 28, and then I guess the chance for parole will come. I don't know if it will. I don't think it. I think it's a hard 28. I don't think there's a chance to be let
Okay.
out earlier.
Right. Okay.
And I know that his family, they talked after. His wife and his two children were in the courtroom as they took down Palmer. And it was strange because Palmer kept looking across to his family, to his parents, and he kept mouthing like "I love you" to them. And how
Mhm.
hard must that have been for his parents? Because that's your child up there. And you know that he's done something absolutely horrific. And when you're listening to that in the court and you're
Mhm.
getting all of the details for it, that is quite a horrific thing to be listening to, that your son has done something so bad, but you still love him because he's your son, and you're still
Yeah.
his parents. And I think that sometimes, however hard things are, you probably feel guilty because you still love that child. You still love them no matter what they
Yeah.
do. You might not like them
Yep.
and you might not like what they do, but there is still that parental love there. And
Yeah.
I
It's
feel
still your
that,
child. Yeah.
yeah, the ripples of something like this in the wider kind of community is awful because it's not just Peter. I mean, obviously, Peter suffered the worst because his life has been taken, but Peter's wife, Peter's children, Peter's friends, other dog walkers, the person that found him, the paramedics, the firefighters, the police that had to deal with this, the courts, the people that are in the court that have to listen and see. There's so many people, his parents, his friends, his partner. There's so many people affected by this one act. And it's not just that you're
Mhm.
affected now, you're affected for the rest of your life. It's something that is going to be there for the rest for as long as you live.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. So although Peter's family, they got that guilty verdict, it's
Mhm.
I don't think it's not a consolation really. It's not a closure. It's not a
No.
it's not an end for them. It doesn't just stop hurting there just because they've got him. Obviously, it's a slight part of comfort for them that the man that did it is in prison and he is being punished for what he did. But it still carries on. The hurt and the pain still carries on for them as and there's nothing you can do to stop that.
It's it's unbelievable. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and question, why didn't he seek any sort of help?
Yeah, yeah.
It's easy for me to do that. So I can't say that, you know, he I don't know. I can't say what he was thinking, what he was feeling.
No.
Um, but it this seems like something that could have been avoided, easily avoided
Yeah.
with the right care, the right intervention.
Mm.
Um, I'd be curious to see how long or to know how long like these occurrences have been going on. Because you said he was in the military. It's like, so
Yes.
you would think that he would have had to gone through evaluations
Yeah.
prior to enlisting
Or
or,
being dismissed
serving.
from. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was able to obviously um, pass those without any problems.
Mm.
Um, so is this something that he had been struggling with for a long time? How old was he? You said he was like
24.
24, or was this something that occurred from his time in the military? Right? Is
Yeah.
this
Well, they're blaming
Is
this
this
stamp on the head. They're blaming this altercation with another soldier when he was in the military and he had his head stamped on. They're blaming that. That's what
yeah,
they're saying is the reason that he's now got this, this damage to his brain that's making him behave like this.
right, right. I mean, the brain is a very scary thing.
Yes.
Um, I mean, we've seen time and time again people who at one point we consider normal
Yeah.
have struggles because of things like CTE, right?
Oh,
And
yeah. That's right.
what that does to a person's brain. So,
Yeah.
is it possible? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just I I don't know. Like, I would like to think that if one day I woke up and I was, started having these thoughts of what would it be like to kill someone or stab someone, that I would
Yeah. That's
some
right.
part of me,
Yeah.
some part of my own humanity would kick in like, whoa, something's not right,
No.
and I would seek the help.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I don't have any personal experience of suffering from like a mental illness like that, or a mental. I don't want to say it's a mental illness, but like an episode. Say, I don't have any experience of having those any thoughts like that, or having. I know that people can have very disturbing thoughts, but not realize at
Mhm.
the time that those thoughts are disturbing. So I think it's a very hard topic. Unless you are like a clinical psychiatrist or a working psychologist or something like that, I think that it's very difficult to say what you would do at the time. And I think that for us, when you're looking at something like this, the very easy thing to do is to say, well, he should have got help or somebody should have noticed or, and I think it's very hard because I'm looking at this, I'm trying to put myself into the sort of position of the family, and had that have been my dad, how would
Right.
I have felt if somebody had done that in my family? I think I probably wouldn't be very accepting of the fact that something had happened to them that had damaged their brain and that's why their behavior. I wouldn't just go, "Oh, okay, that explains it." Because to me, that's my dad, and that's what you've done to my dad. Now I've lost my dad, and not only have I lost him, I've lost him in an absolutely horrific and brutal way. And I'm not sure that personally I
Yeah.
would be very understanding to that kind of thing.
Mhm.
You know, I
No,
think
you're
I
right.
think it's quite difficult. I mean, the thing is, the area that this happened in, this is not the only two bad things that have happened there. There was also um back to, where were we? So if you go right back, okay, there was
Mhm.
a farm in the area. Now I've sent you a little map. I know you love map, and I'll put this up on our
Okay.
socials. But I sent you this little map. Now on this map, you
Yes.
will see that there is an area there. Now you can see where it says pig farm. You can see where it says heath.
Yes.
Okay, so the
Yes.
heath is that's where Peter was walking with the dog in that area. Okay, the pig farm there to the left is where the next story has happened. Okay,
Okay.
so this pig farm in 1945, this pig farm was the scene of a huge tragedy when the US Air Force Liberator aircraft, which had been converted into a flying fuel transporter, actually crashed into a barn shortly after takeoff from the RAF base, which is in Snetterton Heath, which is not very far away. So this aircraft took off. It ended up crash landing into the field and onto a barn in this farm, which is on this area of the forest, and it killed everyone on board.
Oh god.
So the barn was rebuilt again in 1948, and even to this day, there are plaques marking the spot where everybody on that board that aircraft had died. Okay. Then this
Mhm.
farm in 2012 becomes the subject of another tragedy. Okay. The body of Stephen Brown, who was 52, who lived on Harling Farm, which is on Eccles Road in East Harling, was discovered at 7:30 a.m. on the 14th of February 2012. Okay. It was understood
Yeah.
that he had received abuse and malicious calls following some media coverage of an investigation by the RSPCA. Now, this video footage was sent in by an animal rights group, which is called Animal Quality. And this had been put online earlier of pigs that were allegedly being kicked, they were being slapped, they
Mm.
were being beaten with iron bars on Mr. Brown's farm.
Ugh.
So he
Okay.
was now the subject of this cruelty, like animal cruelty thing, and he was receiving a lot of backslash. Um, Unfortunately, his body was found outside his vehicle on a track which was adjacent to Quidnam Road in East Harling, and he had a shotgun beside him. There were notes left, photos of his family and friends on the passenger seat of his car, and he was unfortunately pronounced dead at the scene. Now, post-mortem
Mm.
examination found that the cause of death was a shotgun wound to the head, and the verdict was then deemed as suicide whilst in a disturbed state of mind.
Oh, and this was right
This was
right
2014,
there,
right there.
2014. So
Yeah.
right before Peter, and you said close to where Peter was, right?
Sorry, 2012 it was. Yeah, that's close to the heath. It's in the same area. So you've
Mm.
got the rape of a pensioner, you've got the brutal murder of another pensioner, you've got the Air Force plane that had crashed there and killed lots of people. You've then got this guy who's unfortunately ended his life by suicide because of the pressure that he was underneath, all from the same area of woodland. Now, in July 2014, there were 5 friends that were going out using their metal detectors, okay, in this spot at around 11 p.m. So this is in the same area of woodland. It's in roughly the same geographical area. I'm not saying it's right on the spot
Mhm.
where Peter died, but very close to. Now, they were there around 11 p.m. They saw something strange in woodland in front of them. Now, in between trees was this glowing turquoise green, which moved through the trees very quickly. And they kind of like were looking at it. What the hell is that? But it was darting at like strange angles. First of all, they thought maybe it was like the light reflecting off of
Uh-huh.
like deer's eyes or something, or an animal's eyes, but it was darting at all these different angles. Now then the light started to it stayed the same brightness and it stayed in the same area and it moved very, very quickly. So they thought, oh, maybe it was a torch or maybe it was a laser or something like that. But all of them,
Right.
all 5 of them, have described this wave of dreadful unease and guilt kind of like wash over them at this time. After a few
Yeah.
minutes, they all basically just, crap their pants and ran, to be honest, and ran away. But in 2008, there were more sights of these strange lights in this area. There were sights of a beam of light that was darting from side to side in the sky in the area of the woods, just a mile from where those other people had seen the lights. A witness had said, I saw a light going across the sky from left to right repeatedly. It was quite spooky because the sky ahead of me was very, very dark. So it showed up like a white spot of light. My son
Mhm.
also saw this, and he was in the recreation ground across from the fields. So Norfolk UFO Society, didn't even know this was a thing, but they actually got involved in this. And the committee member, a guy called John Sayer, who's been researching UFOs for over 40 years, said that this sounded like a completely unusual sighting for the area. But there was
Yeah.
loads of people. They had a lady called Sarah Cubley of East Harling. She said she saw the lights, and she describes it at exactly the same time. Her niece also saw it, and they went and watched this light dart about in their forest. Another witness had said they were standing on a picnic bench. They could see the lights. They saw them approximately over Thetford on the 4th of July. It was 11:15 at night. It was there for about 25 minutes. It was a white beam that went from left to right in a wave effect. It was really strange, and we've never seen anything like it before. So they contacted neighbors, and there was a retired American guy, and he said that he and his wife also saw these lights. They said it wasn't a beam from the ground, but it was a strong beam from like higher up in the clouds. So it was actually coming down towards the trees. There was no noise. They
Yeah.
say it wasn't an aircraft. It wasn't a helicopter. But they all say it was all the same time. So they can all corroborate each other's stories, even though they don't know each other. And they've all seen it from different areas around this woodland. So, I mean, that's another strange thing that's been happening in the area. It just seems to me that this whole woodland is not somewhere I want to go and visit, and that is very
No, I
cursed.
was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure people have had very
Yeah.
uneventful dog walks there, very peaceful, uneventful, happy dog walks, and nothing has happened. But I just read this and I was like, what? All these things
I
have
mean,
happened in this one area. This is crazy.
and it's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Nowhere. Yeah. Because first of all, I'm the first person that's going to rubbish off UFO sightings. And I was like, no, it's got to be
Yeah.
someone with a torch, or it's someone, messing about with a laser or something. But when you've got lots of different people that don't know each other, that are all corroborating each other's stories with the same information at the same time, you kind of think, oh, okay, maybe not a UFO, but well, it is because
Mhm.
it's unidentified. So I'm not saying it's an alien. Let me just get that straight. But it is an unidentified object. So it
Right.
is. It is some object that nobody seems to be able to explain what it is. There's nobody doing any training in the area. There's no, like military that are doing any like sniper sets where they've got, beams of light or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just totally unexplained.
So you don't have RAF version of Area 51 around there or anything?
Well, you might need to be, mightn't it? Because it's a very, very strange case. And obviously the rapist, the young boy that was the rapist, has never been found.
Yeah.
Obviously we know who killed Peter, we know that. But then you've got this other stuff where the knife was never found, and I just read it and just thought, oh my goodness, this is just. I would be really frightened if I was a local person living there. I would not want to go and walk my dog in an area like that.
I mean, just looking at the area in itself, I think
Yeah.
I'd be creeped out by the area anyways because of just how remote it is and how there's really
Mm.
not much around. Like if
No,
something
nothing.
this seems
No
like an
houses
area
or
that if
anything.
something goes wrong, if something goes wrong in this area, you're in a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's put it this way. It wouldn't be the sort of place that I would allow my kids to go and play on their own, 16 or yeah, or older. I wouldn't want them
No.
up there on their own, because it seems like you say, the sort of place that even if you just fell and twisted your ankle or, hurt
Mhm.
yourself, it seems like the place to kind of me that it's going to be a long time before anyone finds you. You're going to be lucky to have a dog walker that sees
Yeah.
you. I mean, I've never been there, so if anybody's listening that has been there that could give us a bit more of an idea of what the area is like, because I mean, there are places like that where I live where I would go and walk my dog, but I always think maybe because we do a podcast, I think about it and think do I really want to walk this place all by myself with just my dog, who's probably going to be absolutely no help whatsoever if somebody attacks me?
Mhm.
Or do I just stick to a local park where it's all open? And I normally would go with the park just for safety, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I just wanna just I'm just thinking about this 1994, the attack and rape. It's just
Yeah.
I can't believe that, nothing's come from it. I
No.
mean, I understand it was, it's 94, it's been nearly, 30 years,
Yeah.
but even with them having, um, even a
They have a
DNA
full DNA
profile,
profile. Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like in that case, like, I don't see a person just doing a brutal attack like that one time and then
I agree. I totally agree with you.
them not doing anything else.
That's
So
what
it's
really bothered me about that. That's what really bothered me about that story, was that I couldn't see that kid never doing that again. It's a compulsion.
yeah,
You know, rape is it's not always, it's not so much the sexual aspect. Rape is usually more about control. The control
yeah,
that the predator has over their victim. And you're talking about a frail 70-year-old woman or 71-year-old woman walking her dog. And this young teenager has distracted her and then pulled her into the bushes. And I'm like thinking, well, he's done that to a grown woman who is elderly, who is vulnerable. You're
mhm,
telling me that he is never going to have a compulsion ever again to do this? I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
yeah,
Had he
I don't
not have been
know.
able to rape her, had it been that he had attacked her, tried to rape her but couldn't, I might have thought that perhaps in the future he would be so disturbed by what he had done that he couldn't carry it out. He was so disturbed by that he never did it again. But the fact that he actually managed to do it and did, and did what he did to her and try and strangle her, I honestly do think that this person has been creepy in future, or one of those people that you would be wary
Yeah,
of because he acts strange. I don't see this person just carrying on normal life, having done that one thing and just gone back to normal. It's frightening that it was a
I don't either.
kid.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, thankfully, she was never named, so she was able to keep her dignity and not have the hounding of the press and have it all over the internet that it was her that this happened to. And I 100% respect that. There's no reason for anybody to know who she is.
mm,
But the story itself is something that people need to understand and talk about, because what if she wasn't the first person? What if he had done this before and the other person was just too frightened to come forward?
yeah,
What if this has happened to somebody else that is living with this, that can't come forward because they're too embarrassed, they're too upset, they're too traumatized by it, and he's got away with it? I hate the fact that somebody's done something so awful to somebody and got away with it
mhm.
scot free. And we know
It's
that after,
terrible.
isn't it after a certain date that offenders are required to give DNA when they are incarcerated? Is it like 88 or something like that, or 98? I don't know why those dates are in my mind, but I believe that it's after a certain date that if an offender is
Mhm.
incarcerated in prison, they have to give their DNA as part of,
I
their
It depends though. It depends on where they're incarcerated, right? I mean, of
yeah,
course, the rules are gonna be different between England and the United States, but even in the
yeah,
United States, I mean, we talked to Charlie McCormick when we were doing the
yeah.
Breckenridge case, and he told us that some states, they don't require DNA
Oh, it's
until
so mad.
release.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. That's right. Yeah, he did say that. You're right. So somebody
So,
could be
I mean, it
serving
varies
like a
from
life,
place to place.
yeah, a life sentence. He could be in there and then you don't find out that he's actually done something to somebody else until he's released.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that was this week's case. These were this week's cases. I just thought it was a really
Yeah.
interesting one that you might not have heard about. And I just
It
wanted to,
is.
yeah, just tell you all about it. So it seems that that tiny little small area of Norfolk has had so many really bad and really strange things happening just in that one place.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I'd
and
like to
and
get, mm,
while you were talking, I was looking up, Norfolk the Constable, was it Constable?
constabulary,
Constabulary? Constabulary, yeah,
constabulary,
that word.
yeah,
And I was like, "Okay, let's see," like, and they have this list of, like, 5 unsolved cases. I'm, like, looking at it, I'm
yeah.
like, "Well, is anything else can be, can can you link one to? I can't link, of course.
No,
But then I'm like
I
looking at one
tried.
where it's
Yeah. Yeah.
like 1992. There's Johanna Young who was
Yeah.
murdered in her home in is it Wanton or
Yeah.
Watton, whatever, which
Yeah.
is just
Wotton,
north
yeah.
of where all this happened.
Yeah.
And so she was 14 in 1992. Well,
Yeah.
if the kid
This guy was
was, if they
16
think
in
they're
94.
16, yeah, same age, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. Like, but there's
Yeah.
nothing that seems to like, um, nothing as brutal as the
No.
rape that happened in this Harling
And like you
Woods.
said, I find that really brutal for such a young offender. It's a very, very brutal
Yeah,
attack.
and I'd be shocked if that's the only thing he's ever done.
Me too. And I would really, really like for that person to be found.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you for that. That was actually really interesting. Different, definitely different,
Yeah,
but
really different to
I
normal.
really enjoyed that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd love
I
to hear
like
your
that.
thoughts. So if you've got thoughts on this case, then send us a message on Instagram, send us a message on Facebook. We'd love to hear what you think about it and any ideas that you might have. We're always happy to hear what you think about cases. So yeah, definitely get in contact with us.
Yep. And with that, how about we do a little dumb criminal?
Let's go.
Hey, criminal, use a dummy.
All right, Sherry. So, um, everyone's heard stories of criminals who try to get away from the cops. They try to run, and
Hmm.
they get the K9 unit called on them, and they end up getting bit. Well, this one's kind of the same, so it's kind of along those lines. Um, this occurred recently in the state of Delaware. Okay, so Delaware State Police arrested a man after he assaulted two state troopers following a traffic stop. Okay.
Okay.
So he was a 47-year-old man named Jamal Wing, and he lived in Wilmington, Delaware. And he ended up being arrested for felony resisting arrest, assaulting troopers, and a DUI. Okay. So this incident began shortly before 2 a.m. when a trooper saw a black Camry speeding southbound on Philadelphia Pike. The trooper initiated a traffic stop on the Toyota, and it stopped in a nearby parking lot. Now, officer said that the driver, who was identified as that Jamal Wing,
Uh-huh.
forcibly resisted arrest when troopers and a state police K9 were detaining him. Okay, now this is where it gets
Right.
strange. Now, rather than the K9 biting Mr. Wang ended up biting the K9 dog multiple times during their ordeal.
No. Oh my God. He bit the dog.
He bit the dog.
Okay.
So officers did smell alcohol in his breath,
I bet.
when they actually were. So he was drunk.
Yeah.
They ended up taking Mr. Wayne to a local hospital for treatment, as he sustained injuries during the detainment. I'm sure that the dog bit him as well.
Well, I hope the dog was all
So
right. I
while
hope
in
they gave the dog a shot so that he didn't
oh
get
no,
anything bad from that man and his teeth.
he did
I
he
wouldn't
didn't
give
get
him
rid.
one.
Yes, it's just the dog. Make sure the
Yeah, just
dog's
the dog.
okay.
Make sure the dog's okay and leave him. I mean, how ridiculous.
So while in the hospital, Mr. Wing decided to continue to resist, and he assaulted yet another trooper, causing trooper injury, and also he damaged some state police property. Now, so overall, two troopers and the K9, his name was Mako, were injured by Mr. Wing, and they all required medical evaluation. Mr. Wing has been charged with 2 counts of felony assault in the second degree on a police officer, felony assault in the first degree on a law enforcement animal, felony third offense
Good.
of driving under the influence of alcohol, 2 counts of felony resisting arrest with force or violence, resisting arrest, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, failure to have a required license, speeding in excess, and duty to sign and carry license. So Mr. Wings is in a lot of trouble.
But can you imagine, like, he's going to be in prison recounting his, like they do, recounting his arrest story, and he's going to be telling them all that they bit the dog. And I hope all of those convicts are going to be going, that's really bad. You shouldn't have touched the dog.
Yeah.
Because, like,
Well, they will, because
I hope
when he goes,
so.
as soon as he goes to prison, they're going to ask for, the other people in prison are going to be asking for his paperwork,
his rap sheet.
and they're going to look at him like, you bit a dog?
That's right.
What is wrong with you?
We're going to beat your ass down now, and you deserve it.
Yeah, you don't bite dogs.
You don't bite dogs.
Come on, people.
Especially police dogs that are just trying to do their jobs.
Yeah. I hope he ripped his balls off.
That would be so fun. I hope he did do him some damage so he never forget. I hope he ripped his balls off. That's hilarious. Oh, dear.
Oh, my
Well,
God.
thank you so much for joining us this week. We will be back next week. We might be slightly later next week. Got a few things happening next week, so it might be slightly later that your episode is out, but no fear. We will be out next week. And you can, in the meantime, contact both of us on our socials, Cherry at crimepediapodcast.com or Morgan at crimepediapodcast.com, or you can find us on Instagram like at Cherry Crimepedia and at Morgan Crimepedia. But for now, we will leave you in peace. So be nice.
And bye.